The sound still haunted him. Even lying in this Rome hospital bed, Captain Alessandro Torriani could hear those 6 machine guns tearing through the air. The scars on his face were healing, but his confidence never would. 3 weeks had passed since that morning over Italy. 3 weeks since he learned the deadliest lesson of his flying career. You never judge an enemy by how it looks. The F-4U Corsair had taught him that, the hard way. Torriani's left arm hung useless in a sling. His Machi C202 was scattered across an Italian hillside. His squadron was gone, all because they had laughed at an airplane. But this story really begins months earlier, back when American engineers faced an impossible challenge. The U.S. Navy wanted a fighter faster than anything flying. It had to carry massive firepower, and it had to operate from aircraft carriers. Charles Vought got the contract in 1940. His chief designer, Rex Beisel, faced a huge problem. The most powerful engine available was enormous. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp produced over 2,000 horsepower. That power needed a propeller over 13 feet across. Such a massive prop would hit the ground on a normal fighter. Beisel's solution changed aviation forever. The inverted gull wing. Wings angled down from the body, then back up at the tips. This let him mount the landing gear low enough for ground clearance. The prop could spin freely. The result looked unlike any fighter ever built. Beautiful and ugly at the same time. Graceful in flight, awkward on the ground. When production Corsairs rolled out in 1942, they shattered records. The F-4U became the first American fighter to exceed 400 mph. Its top speed of 417 mph made it the fastest fighter in the world. Speed was just the beginning. The Corsair's firepower was devastating. 6 Browning 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the wings. Each gun fired 750 rounds per minute. When all 6 fired together, they produced 4,500 rounds per minute. The 50 caliber bullets weighed nearly 2 ounces each. They traveled at over 2,800 feet per second. The Corsair was built like a tank. Its structure was massively strong to handle carrier landings. The pilot sat behind armor plating and bulletproof glass. This combination made the F-4U revolutionary. But like many revolutionary weapons, it had problems at first. The aircraft was hard to land on carriers. Poor visibility made it tricky to fly. The powerful engine created handling issues. Most seriously, the Corsair could stall without warning. Several test pilots died learning this. The Navy initially rejected the Corsair for carrier use. Instead, the first F-4Us went to Marine squadrons on land bases. This decision proved fortunate. Marine pilots became the first to unlock the Corsair's deadly potential. They learned to fight differently. No more traditional dogfighting. The key was energy management. Use the Corsair's superior speed and climb rate. Control the terms of every fight. Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington explained it perfectly. The F-4U isn't just another fighter. It's a completely new kind of weapon. Forget everything you know about dogfighting. This aircraft is designed to kill, not to dance. Use its speed. Use its firepower. Never give the enemy a fair fight. Meanwhile, in Italy, pilots like Torriani dominated the skies. Their Machi C202 fighters were excellent aircraft. Fast, maneuverable, beautifully designed. The German Daimler-Benz engine pushed them over 370 mph. Italian pilots were skilled and experienced. Many had fought in the Spanish Civil War. But by early 1944, things were desperate. Italy had surrendered in September 1943. German forces occupied northern Italy. Italian pilots found themselves in an impossible situation. They were fighting alongside former enemies against former allies. Many of the best pilots had defected. Aircraft production had virtually stopped. The pilots who remained flew patched-together aircraft. They burned questionable fuel, but they kept their confidence and fighting spirit. When intelligence photos of the new American fighter arrived, Italian pilots saw no reason for concern. The F-4U Corsair looked nothing like a proper fighter. "Look at this thing," Torriani told his squadron mates. "The Americans have finally run out of ideas. This looks like something a child would draw." The reconnaissance photos seemed to confirm their assumptions. Those bent wings looked structurally weak. The massive nose seemed to block forward vision completely. "They call it the Corsair," Lieutenant Marco Santini laughed. "Look at those wings bent like a seagull. That enormous nose looks like they strapped an engine to a flying bathtub." How wrong they were! The F-4U combined advantages that had never existed in one aircraft before. Faster than a Mustang, tougher than a Thunderbolt, more heavily armed than any fighter they'd ever seen. Most importantly, it was flown by pilots trained to maximize its unique capabilities. Marine Corsair squadrons had arrived in the Pacific in 1943. Their early experiences were mixed. The aircraft's challenging handling claimed several pilots during training, but by late 1943, Marine pilots had developed tactics that played to the Corsair's strengths. They avoided turning fights where the Corsair's weight was a disadvantage. Instead, they used superior speed and climb rate to control engagements, dive from high altitude, make high-speed firing passes, climb away before enemies could respond. This was energy-based warfare, not traditional dogfighting. In January 1944, the first F-4U Corsairs arrived at Italian airfields. Experienced Marine pilots brought hard-won knowledge from brutal Pacific battles. Major Robert "Cowboy" Cowan had recognized the Corsair's potential early. "We don't dogfight," he told his pilots. "We execute." Now it was February 14, 1944. Captain Torriani walked toward his Machi C-202 in the morning sun. The 24-year-old ace had claimed 12 Allied aircraft. His confidence was absolute, his swagger unmistakable. He was flying one of Italy's finest fighters, and he had intelligence about that ridiculous new American aircraft. "Have you seen the photographs of this new American fighter?" Torriani called to Santini. "Those wings bent like a seagull, that enormous nose." They laughed over their morning espresso. The F-4U did look ungainly compared to their sleek Machis. Its inverted gull wings seemed almost comical. "The Americans have finally lost their minds," Santini replied. "How can something so ugly possibly fly well? Our fighters will dance circles around this flying brick." What these Italian pilots didn't know was terrifying. They were about to encounter the most lethal fighter ever created. Within hours, their laughter would turn to terror. At 15,000 feet above the Italian countryside, Torriani spotted them first. Dark specks approaching from the southeast. 12 B-25 Mitchell bombers in tight formation. But it was the escort fighters that caught his attention. 8 No-12 aircraft with distinctive silhouettes. Even at distance, those inverted gull wings were unmistakable. "Contact 2 o'clock high," Torriani radioed. "I count 12 escort fighters. They look different from the usual Mustangs." "Those must be the new Corsairs," Santini's voice crackled back. "They're even uglier in person," he whined. "Look at those ridiculous wings!" What the Italians couldn't see was the careful formation discipline. These weren't loose, undisciplined formations. These Marines had learned their lessons in Pacific combat. They flew in tight, mutually supporting pairs. Each pilot constantly scanned for threats while maintaining perfect position. Major Cowan had spotted the Italian fighters immediately. "Bandits, 11 o'clock high," Cowan announced calmly. 4 contacts. Looks like Macus. Remember your briefing, gentlemen. We have the speed and firepower. Use them. The tactical situation demonstrated the fundamental difference between old and new warfare. Italian pilots began maneuvering for advantageous position. They climbed and spread out, preparing for a turning fight. Torriani's plan was textbook perfect for 1940. Lead his flight in a climbing turn. Get above and behind the Americans. Dive for a deflection shot. Pull up into a climbing turn that would force the Americans to follow. Once engaged in turning combat, superior Machi maneuverability would quickly tell. But Major Cowan had no intention of playing by old rules. He did something that violated every traditional fighter tactic. He ignored the Italian fighters completely. "Stay with the bombers," Cowan ordered. "Let them come to us." This decision baffled the Italians. In their experience, escort fighters always turned to engage attackers. The fact that Corsairs continued straight suggested cowardice or incompetence. "They're not even turning to fight," Santini observed with amusement. "These Americans have no fighting spirit at all." Torriani rolled into a steep dive, building speed. The lead Corsair sat perfectly in his gun sight, flying straight and level like a training target. At 400 yards, he pressed the trigger. His 12.7mm bullets streamed toward the American fighter. What happened next would haunt his memory forever. The Corsair suddenly pulled up into a climb so steep and fast it seemed impossible. The massive Pratt & Whitney engine hauled the fighter skyward at incredible rate. In seconds, the Corsair gained 2,000 feet. Torriani's bullets trailed harmlessly through empty air. His Machi simply couldn't match that raw power. "Madonna!" Torriani gasped as the American climbed away like a rocket. By the time he pulled out of his dive, the Corsair was above him. Diving back down, Major Cowan's attack was a masterpiece. He had used superior power-to-weight ratio to convert the Italians' attack into defensive position, then employed devastating firepower to end the fight. The 650 caliber machine guns opened fire at 300 yards. Muzzle flashes created a deadly constellation of light. Each gun fired 750 rounds per minute. The combined weight of fire was staggering, 4,500 rounds per minute of half-inch bullets traveling at nearly 3,000 feet per second. Torriani felt his Machi shudder as bullets struck home. The 50 caliber rounds were massive. Each bullet weighed nearly 2 ounces. They carried tremendous kinetic energy. They didn't just punch small holes. They tore away chunks of metal and structure. The first burst lasted only 2 seconds. It was enough to cripple the Italian fighter. Bullets smashed through the engine cowling. Oil lines severed, cylinders punctured. The windscreen exploded in glass fragments. Rudder cables cut. Torriani had limited ability to maneuver, but the psychological impact was most devastating. He had never experienced such overwhelming firepower. The sound was like being inside a giant drum during a thunderstorm. Vibration blurred his vision. His hands shook on the controls. "My God," he gasped into his radio. "What kind of guns are those?" The Browning M250 caliber was the most powerful aircraft gun in the world. Originally designed as an anti-tank weapon, adapted for aircraft use with devastating effectiveness. The ammunition came in several varieties: armor-piercing, incendiary, explosive, each designed for maximum destruction. Corsairs carried a mix of all 3 types. When all 6 guns fired together, they created a cone of destruction nearly impossible to survive. Lieutenant Santini watched his leader's aircraft disintegrate. The Corsair's attack had been so fast, so devastating, there was no time to react. One moment, Torriani was diving on an easy target. The next, his aircraft trailed smoke and debris. "Alessandro!" Santini called desperately. "Alessandro, respond!" But Torriani was fighting for his life. His crippled fighter spiraled toward Earth. The engine was seizing. Oil pressure dropped to zero. Controls were sluggish and unresponsive. Smoke filled the cockpit. The ace who had started the day with supreme confidence now faced death or capture. Major Cowan was already climbing away, seeking new targets. His attack had demonstrated the Corsairs' revolutionary approach. Speed, firepower, and energy management had replaced dogfighting skills. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds from contact to result. This was the new reality the Corsair represented. The aircraft that could climb fastest, dive fastest, and deliver most firepower would dominate. Santini, attempting to avenge his leader, found himself in the same impossible situation. As he maneuvered for attack, another Corsair dove on him from above. The .50 caliber bullets struck with sledgehammer force. First rounds destroyed the supercharger and severed fuel lines. Second burst shattered the canopy and wounded Santini. The third burst struck the wing root and cut the main spar. The fighter broke apart in midair, wing folding upward as structural failure spread. Santini barely bailed out before his aircraft exploded. The remaining Italian pilots, faced with an enemy they couldn't understand, made the only rational decision. They ran. But even retreat wasn't safe. Corsairs could catch any aircraft they chose to pursue. Superior speed and climb rate made escape nearly impossible. Italian pilots found themselves hunted by predators they couldn't outrun, outclimb, or outfight. The psychological impact would reverberate for months. Pilots reported Corsair sightings even when none were present. The distinctive engine sound became a source of terror. A deep, throaty roar unlike any other fighter. Flight Sergeant Mario Bellagamba described the effect. "Today, we scrambled to intercept bombers over Florence. Someone reported Corsairs in the area. Immediately the formation spread out. Pilots looked nervously over shoulders. We never saw a single Corsair. But the mission was ruined. How can we fight an enemy that defeats us just by existing?" The Corsair's reputation was enhanced by incredible survivability. Marine Captain James "Zig" Civoli returned from Rome with his fighter riddled with 20-millimeter cannon holes. Hits in engine, wings, and fuselage. The aircraft continued flying normally. "Any other fighter would have gone down," Civoli reported. "The F4U kept flying like nothing happened." This survivability added another layer of demoralization. Italian pilots who scored hits watched in dismay as Corsairs continued flying. Damage that would destroy their aircraft seemed to have no effect. The technical superiority was matched by pilot quality. Marine aviators in the Mediterranean were Pacific veterans. They brought hard-won tactical knowledge and unshakable confidence. These pilots had faced the legendary Zero fighters and their skilled pilots. They had emerged victorious. Italian fighters, while well-designed and bravely flown, simply couldn't match this combination. Industrial capacity was equally important. Chancevaught's production line delivered over 400 Corsairs monthly by early 1944. Additional aircraft came from Goodyear and Brewster. Every Corsair loss was replaced within days by another experienced pilot. Every Italian pilot shot down was an irreplaceable loss. The strategic balance was unsustainable. 3 weeks after his crash, Torriani reflected on the broader implications. In his diary he wrote, "We have been fighting the last war while Americans prepared for the next one. Our beautiful Maquis were designed for 1940 warfare, but the Corsair represents 1950. We are not just outmatched, we are obsolete." This realization spread throughout Italian aviation. The aircraft, dismissed as ugly, was the most advanced fighter in the world, years ahead of European practice. The inverted gull wing was engineering mastery. It combined large, powerful engine advantages with carrier operation requirements. The massive nose housed the most sophisticated power plant in aviation. Those 650 caliber guns represented fundamental shift in armament philosophy. European designers focused on lighter, faster-firing weapons. Americans chose maximum destructive power per round. By summer 1944, Corsair psychological dominance was breaking Italian pilot morale. Word spread of the American fighter's invincibility. Experienced pilots requested transfers or simply disappeared. The few aces who continued flying developed tactics specifically to avoid Corsair encounters. Attack only when certain no F-4Us were present. Disengage immediately at first sign of the distinctive fighter. These measures preserved some aircraft, but meant Italian air power ceased being effective. By September 1944, organized Italian air resistance had virtually ended. The proud Regia Aeronautica was systematically destroyed. Lieutenant Colonel Giuseppe Cheney read after-action reports with alarm. In 3 weeks, his group had lost 18 aircraft and 12 pilots. The kill ratio was unprecedented. The men are calling it Il Diavolo Blu, the Blue Devil, Cheney told his staff. They say the Corsair is invincible. If we cannot restore confidence, we'll have no pilots left. But confidence required understanding what made the Corsair so effective. Italian intelligence struggled to comprehend complete aerial dominance by a single aircraft type. The truth was quantum leap in fighter design. While Europeans refined existing concepts, Americans started fresh. They designed around the most powerful engine available. Major Cowan explained the principles to his squadron. Gentlemen, the F-4U isn't just another fighter. It's a revolution in aerial warfare. Every previous fighter was designed around dogfighting. The Corsair changes all that. We don't dogfight. We execute. The tactical doctrine was energy management over maneuvering. The massive engine converted altitude to speed and back more efficiently than any other fighter. Our advantage isn't just speed or firepower, Cowan continued. It's ability to dictate the fight. We engage with advantage and disengage when we don't. This flexibility was demonstrated daily as Corsair squadrons began systematic operations. Unlike earlier Allied fighters relying on numbers or surprise, F-4Us attacked heavily defended targets with confidence. The psychological warfare aspect was as important as physical effectiveness. The distinctive engine sound became terror for Axis pilots throughout the Mediterranean. Captain Torriani, permanently grounded due to injuries, spent the rest of his life remembering those machine gun sounds. The devastating effectiveness of the aircraft he'd dismissed as a flying bathtub. The F-4U Corsair had proven that appearances could be fatally deceiving. The ungainly-looking aircraft revolutionized aerial combat. It introduced concepts influencing fighter design for decades. The pilots who mocked its bent wings learned brutally that aerial warfare's future belonged to the most lethal, not most beautiful aircraft. Laughter in Italian ready rooms was replaced by silence. The silence of pilots who learned to fear the Corsair's distinctive whistle. The eternal silence of those who learned too late that the Blue Devil was no laughing matter. The F-4U announced a new era where technological superiority and tactical innovation would triumph over tradition and experience. The Italian pilots' initial reaction was understandable, but fatal. They judged the aircraft by appearance rather than capability. A mistake that cost them their air force and, for many, their lives. The Corsair taught the world a lesson resonating through the jet age. In aerial combat's deadly business, it's not how you look that matters. It's how effectively you destroy enemies when shooting starts.